static electricity. It is in the air around you right now, not metaphorically, literally. The atmosphere above your home carries a measurable electrical potential that has been documented since the 18th century. Benjamin Franklin measured it. Nikola Tesla built equipment designed to harvest it. And in 1901, Tesla filed a patent describing a receiver specifically engineered to pull usable electricity from the sky. That patent is public. The method is documented. And not one power company in the world offers it to you as an option. Think about that for a moment. My name is Dr. Elena Ward. I have spent 8 years studying the electrical methods that were buried, rerouted, or simply never taught. This channel documents every suppressed method, every patent, every experiment that the energy industry tried to erase. And today, we are building something. A working atmospheric energy harvester, step by step, from components you can buy at any hardware store. Let us get into it. The principle is not exotic. It is electrochemistry and not fringe. It is electrochemistry and atmospheric physics. The Earth carries a negative charge. The upper atmosphere carries a positive charge. Between them, a potential difference exists at all times. Scientists have measured this differential at between 100 and 300 volts per meter of altitude under normal atmospheric conditions. That is not a small number. That is a significant, persistent, harvestable electrical gradient that has existed since before humans built the first city. Tesla understood this in 1899 during his experiments in Colorado Springs. He was not just studying lightning. Lightning was the dramatic version of what he was actually measuring. He was measuring the quiet, constant electrical tension in the atmosphere between storms. In his lab notebooks, he described the air itself as a conductor. Not during storms, always. He called it the ground state of atmospheric electricity. And he believed it was harvestable with the right antenna design. Here's something I want to say plainly because I do not hear other researchers in this space say it often enough. Tesla was probably wrong about the scale. He believed atmospheric harvesting could power cities. That specific claim requires more than the documented science supports. What I can tell you is what the documented science does support, which is that measurable, low-level atmospheric charge collection is real, has been demonstrated repeatedly, and can power small devices. That is what we are building today, not a city-powering tower. A working device with measurable output. The honest version. Now, before we get to the build, I want to tell you about a moment that changed how I understood this research. It was 2018. I was in a university library in the Midwest, working through an archive of early 20th century electrical engineering papers. There was a folder, Manila, old, labeled simply Atmospheric Electrical Collection Studies, 1920 to 1952. Inside were 12 papers, peer-reviewed, published, describing working experimental results, real voltage measurements, real collection rates, real methodology. I sat with those papers for 4 hours, not because the science was complicated, because I kept asking myself the same question. Where did this go? These were not fringe publications. These were mainstream engineering journals. And then, after 1952, the research simply stopped. The next 30 years of those same journals contained almost nothing on the subject. It did not get disproven. It did not get superseded. It just stopped. I went back to the library the following year to photograph those papers. The folder was still there. 8 of the 12 papers had been removed. No record of withdrawal, no replacement note, just gone. 4 papers remained in the folder. I have copies of all 4. Here is what those papers confirmed and what we are applying today in this build. The most effective atmospheric collection antennas share 3 characteristics. First, height. The potential differential increases with altitude, so even 10 meters of elevation matters. Second, surface area. The larger the collection surface, the more charge accumulates. Third, grounding. A direct, low-resistance connection to earth ground is essential. Without grounding, the system cannot complete the circuit that allows current to flow. The build I am walking you through today is a scaled, practical version of the principles Tesla documented in U.S. Patent 685,957, filed in 1901. It has 4 components: an elevated antenna wire, a collection capacitor, a discharge circuit, and a ground stake. That is it. You need approximately $9 in materials from any hardware store. Let me walk through each component. The antenna is a length of bare copper wire, minimum 6 meters, ideally 12 or more. You want it elevated as high as safely possible. A rooftop mount, a tall tree, a pole. The higher, the better. The copper should be bare, but not insulated. Insulation reduces charge collection. Run the wire down from the elevation point without touching any metal structure along the way. This is your primary collector. The capacitor is your storage element. For this build, use a high voltage capacitor rated at minimum 1000 volts. The atmospheric charge arrives at low current but elevated voltage, and your capacitor needs to handle that safely. You are looking at a component that costs between $2 and $4 at an electronics supplier. Connect one plate of the capacitor to the base of your antenna wire. The discharge circuit is simple. A load resistor and a small neon indicator bulb wired in parallel across the capacitor. The neon bulb gives you visual confirmation of charge accumulation. When the capacitor reaches sufficient voltage, the bulb fires. You will see it. For small practical applications, replace the indicator bulb with a low-power LED circuit or a small charging circuit for a capacitor bank. The ground stake is a copper rod, minimum 30 centimeters, driven directly into moist soil. This completes the circuit. Connect the second plate of the capacitor to the ground stake via a short, low-resistance copper wire. That is your complete build. Antenna collects. Capacitor stores. Discharge circuit confirms or applies power. Ground stake completes the loop. Output levels. I want to be direct about this because misleading claims are what give this field a bad reputation. Under normal conditions, with a 12-meter antenna at moderate elevation, expect charge accumulation sufficient to fire a neon indicator bulb repeatedly, and to accumulate enough stored charge to run a low-power LED continuously. Under high pressure, low humidity conditions, output increases measurably. Under rain or lightning conditions, do not operate this system, ever. Ground it completely and disconnect during storms. This is not a lightning harvesting device. This is an atmospheric differential harvester. Those are not the same thing. Now here's the part that took me 3 years to fully understand. The output of this device is not useful for running a home appliance directly. That was never the point of the original research. The point was cumulative storage, multiple units, larger antenna surface areas, capacitor banks. The 1952 paper I mentioned earlier, one of the 4 I still have, Adroid described a bank of 6 collection antennas feeding a common capacitor array producing continuous output sufficient to run a radio transceiver indefinitely. 6 antennas, a radio, no grid connection. Documented in 1952. Then the research stopped. Here's what I think about when I sit with that fact. It is not anger exactly. It is something quieter. The research was not impossible. It was not disproven. It was inconvenient. The grid infrastructure being built at exactly that time required customers. Metered, paying, dependent customers. A technology that let a household accumulate free atmospheric electricity, even at low levels, was not compatible with that business model. So the research did not get attacked. It did not get discredited. It got defunded. The journals moved on. The engineers working on it retired. The knowledge did not disappear. It just stopped being taught. And here is something I do not hear anyone say plainly. The suppression of atmospheric harvesting research was not a dramatic conspiracy. There was no meeting, no order, no single villain. It was a market decision. The grid was being built. The grid required dependency. Anything that reduced dependency was simply not funded. That is a less exciting story than a shadowy cabal, but it is also harder to dismiss, because it is exactly how markets work. The device you are building today is not going to power your house. I want to be honest with you about that. What it will do is prove to you with your own eyes that the atmosphere is electrically active and that charge can be collected from it using components that cost less than a lunch. Once you have seen that, the rest of the research opens up differently. You stop asking whether it is real. You start asking how far it can actually be taken. If this is new to you, subscribe. I release suppressed methods every week. Most people miss them because the algorithm does not push this content. That is not an accident, but that is a different video. For now, build the harvester. Measure the output. And when the neon bulb fires for the first time, remember that Tesla measured this exact same phenomenon in 1899 and believed it was the beginning of something that would eliminate the electric bill entirely. He may have overestimated the scale. He was not wrong about the principle. The build list is in the description. The patent number is in the description. Tesla U.S. patent 685,957, 1901. Public domain, available to anyone, including you.